So let me please begin by saying good morning to our Kalyana Mitta in North and South America. Good morning. Good afternoon to our friends in Europe and the UK, our friend in Dubai, friends in India, lots of friends in Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, a couple of friends in Thailand, and a couple of friends in Australia. I hope you're all well. Before moving on to Q&A, just talk a little bit about what I've been up to by way of checking in with you. As many of you know, pilgrimage practice has been a large part of my life for the last 10 or so years. In fact, beginning with after my 5th year as a bhikkhu, when I went on a tudong and I walked about 700 kilometers and paid respects to various chedis, ancient Buddha statues. That's when I realized that devotional practice was something helpful to my character. And also that meditating in places where there are Buddha relics, I noticed that my mind became more peaceful, more easily, and more deeply peaceful. And I found that helpful for setting aspirational prayers and having more focus and determination in my practice. So later on, it became possible to spend periods of time in India. And I deeply appreciated, benefited from that wonderful opportunity, wonderful opportunities, many of them. And normally, somewhere between October and March for the last 10 years, I would have gone to Bodh Gaya, but I wasn't able to, as many people in the world are experiencing. We're having to spend more time at home, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but if we know how to use our opportunity. But even so, I did miss the taking a period of time away from the monastery. Part of it is also when you're an abbot, when you're in the monastery, it's not the same as being one of the monks in the monastery. There are a lot of things that the abbot has to think about that other people don't have to think about. So having an opportunity to leave, one notices that the mind instantly feels lighter, not having to hold the monastery. So I decided to go on a bit of a pilgrimage in Thailand with just a few friends. And actually there are many very sacred and holy sites in Thailand. And so I went to Sukhothai, ancient ruins of the ancient kingdom of Sukhothai, paid respects to some very big Buddhas and looked at some beautiful Buddhist art in the museum and meditated next to some relics in the museum. Visually, everything was very beautiful. It was somewhere between 39 and 41 degrees Celsius. So there was also contemplation of the fire element and water element as the sweat rolled down our bodies as we meditated. From Sukhothai, we went to Chiang Mai, this time not walking, this time going in a minivan. And but it was nice to retrace some of the steps of my walking journey 19 years ago. So we meditated at Doi Suthep, a chedi behind Chiang Mai, which has Buddha relics, beautiful gold-leafed chedi. Another ancient temple called Pratat Hari Punchai in Lampun province. And there's another very interesting, actually in the evening, Wat Prasing in Chiang Mai and Wat Chedi Luang. Wat Chedi Luang is a monastery where Luang Por Man used to stay when he was in the Chiang Mai area. And there are some relics of Luang Por Man and Luang Por Mahabua in that area. And it was the one pra, full moon one pra, and we were able to do a circumambulation around this large chedi in the full moonlight. One feels some concern and compassion and a little sadness for the people who depend on tourists whose businesses are being challenged. at the moment. For the spiritual pilgrim, our experience was whenever we went to these holy places, they were exceptionally quiet and clean. So that was quite nice. There's another interesting holy site called the Four Buddhas' Footprints on a big rock in a mountain behind Chiang Mai. So in places like in many countries in Southeast Asia and South Asia, Sri Lanka, Thailand, I think Burma and Cambodia also have, Laos, there are places where people believe Lord Buddha put his footprint. It can be a bit confusing for people to understand because the footprints tend to be rather big. And the way I understand it is it's more like Lord Buddha, while he was alive in his last birth, determining where his community, the Sangha, will go and which regions will become Buddhist kingdoms. And so it's more of a mental determination, a mental impression. But very gifted teachers who have abilities to see such things really can see that these places do have a very special quality of blessing. So there is a place, it's the only one in the world apparently, where the four Buddhas who have come in this eon so far have each placed imprint, and Maitreya will also. So when I did my 700-kilometer Tudong as a 5 Pansa Bhikkhu 19 years ago, that was the destination I walked. So it's about 1,200 meters high on a mountain. And I remember I made the aspiration, due to this merit, paying respects at the four Buddhas' footprints, may I be invited by a faithful layperson to the four holy sites of India. And 2 days later I was, without having mentioned to anybody that I made that aspirational prayer. So that led to feelings of confidence in me that this place is special. And also that the 700-kilometer journey generated some merit. So I wanted to go back there and meditated there. That was very cool. That was 22 degrees. We were meditating from 7 until 8 in the morning. It was very, very peaceful. And great monks such as Lumpur Sim, Lumpur Blien, and Tanajana Nun have confirmed that there is the blessing of the four Buddhas of the eon so far. That's Kakusando Buddha, Konagamana Buddha, Kassapa Buddha, and Gautama Buddha. And to come is Maitreya Buddha. And then after that, to Chiang Rai, checking on a Buddha statue for the new eating hall renovation. And that's, many people know, Ajahn has a rather serious hobby of supervising sacred art. And it's going very nicely. It's a very beautiful Buddha statue. And probably be the last one for Anandagiri. And I'm trying to culminate, I've been co-training the sculptor to be able to make Buddhas that really look like the best of Indian art. And a lot of people are shaking their heads. They don't believe that it will be the last Buddha for Anandagiri, I think. But I'm going to try to make sure it's the last Buddha for Anandagiri. Anyway, so that Buddha statue is very beautiful. It's based on the Gupta images in the Sarnath area, but it has some Pala influences as well as some Nepali influences. And when it's finished, I will share some pictures with you. And it's very beautiful. 2 meters and 80 centimeters tall, one piece of sandstone. So it has the Buddha in meditation posture. It has the 5 first Arahant disciples underneath, along with the deer. The queen and her son, the little prince, who were the sponsors of that original statue. Maitreya and Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattvas on either side. A couple of devas in the sky, just for good measure. And a Bodhi tree. So we're going for the full package. Sounds a bit busy, but it's very serene and beautiful. Trust me. Anyway, after that, I attended my teacher's 67th birthday, and we always have asking of forgiveness, offering of flowers. And I'm a little bit naughty because normally you go a few days before and practice together, and the last day is the asking forgiveness day. I usually turn up for the asking forgiveness ceremony, and then I stay for 4 or 5 nights afterwards, because having lived in a monastery of somewhere between 5 and 7 monks, 1 and 2 nuns for 10 years, I've developed a deep appreciation for a sense of space and a lack of crowds. And I also like to be able to talk with my teacher. So in staying on after the big gathering, I get a chance to have a few chats with my teacher. And so then coming to Bangkok, continuing with the pilgrimage, paying respects to holy sites theme, I was able to meditate at a few of my favorite monasteries, and I also checked out a couple of new ones. So doing a bit of reconnaissance and research, I think some of my Singaporean and Malaysian students would probably enjoy a pilgrimage in Thailand if once travel becomes, and anywhere else in the world, if you can get here, you're welcome. And I was trying to work out which season is best, which places are most quiet, have the best energy, are most suitable. But it was an enjoyable experience after working on the building project for 4 months. And another thing as well is I wanted to talk a little bit about, it might be relevant to some of you, is in our spiritual practice, we sometimes have to make determinations, like we make a kind of a vow. I'm going to be doing less of a certain thing or more of a certain thing. And we have to make these solemn vows with a lot of conviction at times, because this is what makes us put forth more effort to cultivate the wholesome and abandon the unwholesome. But then what do you do if you didn't keep the vow purely? What do you do if you slipped up? It's a serious issue, isn't it? Especially if you've made one of these vows in front of a holy person or a holy site and you haven't kept it. And that's where these practices of what they call repentance. And repentance is different to guilt, feeling guilty or feeling bad. Let's use the word acknowledgement of fault. Acknowledging fault, acknowledging a mistake. So if anybody has, I've made all sorts of vows, and I try to keep all sorts of very high standards. So inevitably, I slip on some of these vows. So what do you do? Then I think rather than just go, okay, well, I broke that one, it's too hard. You do have to honor these things. And that's when going to very holy places and basically restating your pledge, acknowledging fault, and determining to keep the vow again, afresh from this day. So I was doing some of that as well. Sometimes because I was laying 108 bricks a day for a month, I didn't do as much meditation as I promised Lord Buddha I would in Bodh Gaya. So I have to acknowledge that, yes, I did a different practice, wholesome also, but I didn't keep my previous vow purely. So I had to go and acknowledge that. The best place to acknowledge it, I felt, was the 4 Buddha's footprints, and to ask forgiveness. The interesting thing about asking forgiveness, it's important to understand, Lord Buddha's not in the sky judging us holding a grudge. We don't have to grovel and beg for the Buddha's forgiveness if we break a vow. Lord Buddha is pure and free of all negativity. We ask forgiveness in a way so that we forgive ourselves. We acknowledge fault. We acknowledge if we've made a mistake. We acknowledge that we didn't keep a pledge. And then we reinstate that pledge and we ask forgiveness of the Buddha. And then you can imagine, if it's helpful, the Buddha forgives you. The Buddha forgave you. And then you have to forgive yourself. And then you have to pick up where you left off, hopefully as quickly as possible. So I was doing a little bit of that, and I wanted to share it because I think it's an important part of practice. We're not going to abandon all greed, hatred, and delusion unless we put up a serious fight, and we need to make some pretty serious vows. But what happens when you don't keep them purely, or if you make a mistake? So we acknowledge the fault and we start again, as Goenkaji says in his retreats. Start again. Start again. That's what we're very lucky as Buddhists, because we can always do that. Whatever we did, we can always start again. So just wanted to share a little bit of that. And also having a break, like if you've got into a bit of a rut, or if you've just got busy, sometimes just having a change of location. And this helps you to make some determinations. So when I go back to my ordinary life, I'm going to do more of this and less of that. Start again. So that was part of my intention. So I thought I'd share that with you. And I believe we probably have some questions.
Thank you so much for the sharing, Ajahn. Ajahn, question 1. Dear Ajahn, in case of physical pain, how to meditate? Thank you.
So I guess the issue is how much pain. And some people have issues with chronic pain. So I'll talk about basic pain practice first, and then advanced pain practice. So most people having a human birth, a human body, when you come to sit for the first few minutes, there might not be much pain, but for most people, after about 10 or 15 minutes, there's already starting to be some. This is just the nature of having a body made of 4 elements, having had what they call a womb birth. When you have this coarse physical form, there is painful feelings in the body. Apparently the devas have much less pain in their bodies, but people in these coarse form bodies have quite a lot. If it's really important then that in those first few minutes of the meditation before the pain comes, that we are sincere in trying to establish that sense of clarity and mindfulness, because that having an anchor, an eye in a storm, sense of clarity, a sense of presence of mind will help us to be able to be aware of the painful feeling, but give the interest to the breathing. So that's how I personally practice. I'm still giving my main interest to the breathing. And what happens is these painful feelings kind of seem to be impinging into the awareness, impinging into that space. But we try not to have aversion to the pain. So you know the feeling of the in-breath, you know the feeling of the out-breath, and you're aware that there's some pain. And then what happens for most people is that pain will build. And it might come in waves, or there'll be kind of throbbing, pulsating, and in general it gets a bit more painful. So it is important to train with some pain, because the mind has to be able to separate from what is known. So it has to separate from painful feelings, neutral feelings, pleasant feelings coming inwards in order to experience samadhi. And painful feelings can help us to sharpen our mindfulness when we simply know them, know the feelings as they are, without adding aversion or adding fear or adding resentment. Just know them, give the interest to the breath. A practice that can be very helpful is when you practice to the point where you feel like it's getting too much. And when you get to that point where it's getting too much, you just say to yourself, okay, 10 more in and out breaths. 1 in breath put, 1 out breath do, 1. Next in breath put, next out breath do, 2. So it's like it's giving yourself that feeling of, okay, in a couple of minutes or in a minute or so, you'll allow yourself to move. Oftentimes it's the case that after those 10 in and out breaths, the pain has settled down a bit and you don't feel like you need to move straight away. So if that's the case, then you don't move. And then if the pain comes and builds up again, okay, after 10 more breaths. And you work at it. And what you might find, if you do this diligently, is that because you stayed still and didn't impulsively or compulsively react, then the mindfulness gets sharper. And because the mindfulness gets sharper, some samadhi, some presence of mind develops, more presence of mind, and then you don't need to move, even though the pain is still there. So it's an area where we need to experiment. Count the breaths up to 10. After those 10 breaths, it doesn't hurt as much, or you're able to abide with that pain, having developed sharper mindfulness. So just stay still and keep working with it a bit longer. This has enormous benefit in your daily lives, many more benefits than you will realize, because a lot of the suffering we experience is out of reactivity, and a lot of our reactions make situations worse. So when we develop this patience to be with something painful, we can then apply that to difficult relationships, unpleasant noises, the neighbor starting their lawnmower at 6 a.m. or whatever. You don't have to yell at him. You can abide with an unpleasant sound. You can just be aware of it and not be so reactive. Advanced training with painful feelings. I do know a couple of monks who've sat in one posture all night without moving. That's like when they're getting really serious about trying to separate mindfulness from pain and trying to develop samadhi that will separate from feelings. The danger with this practice is some people get good results and other people just end up needing knee surgery. So in a way, you need to know if your barami is at that level. Like, do you have that kind of samadhi and mindfulness that working with the pain to that degree will help you to develop insight and develop samadhi. So I do know a couple of monks who did siddhas practice and who one has had, neither of them have had the knee surgery, but the doctors told them they need it. And they sit on chairs now. They're not capable of sitting on the floor anymore. So there are dangers. Obviously, if they really get amazing samadhi and amazing insight, and they don't have to be born again, there are also some incredible possible benefits. But you need to know if you're at that level. But you can work up to it a bit. So obviously, a good thing to do is, for example, just say 45 minutes I'm not moving. And that's a good start. For 45 minutes, whatever pain comes, I'll work with it. I'll give the interest to the breath, I'll be mindful of the pain, and I'll watch it change. And what's interesting about that is that feeling, I can't stand it anymore, oh my God, I can't bear it. And then it's just gone after another minute or so. And this trains us to not believe I can't stand it, I can't bear it. It's very, very, very helpful because we can apply that in many areas of our life. If you have chronic pain issue, then I think the metta practice is very important. So with loving kindness practice, we're trying to develop loving kindness for all beings. We need to remember that we are one of those beings. Physical pain is suffering, and one type of suffering, unpleasant feelings. The suffering of not liking it, not wanting it, that's a suffering that we add to it. But in and of itself, pain is a type of the pain of unpleasant feelings. So simply for the fact that we experience pain, we can radiate loving kindness to ourselves because we are one being who has suffering. So that's all you need to qualify to be worthy of loving kindness, is that you just have some suffering. If you have some suffering, you qualify. If you have pain, you qualify already. So you can have loving kindness for yourself. But if you can get that loving kindness established in the heart, a palpable feeling of warmth and goodwill, good energy, that will support you when you're trying to be with your breath. It's important to be with the breath because that's what's going to help you to have a consistent mindfulness. It's like giving you an center, a core, a place to fix the attention, because painful feelings can be, like waves, and they can be very overwhelming. So you need a center. So this breath meditation, the metta practice, will help you to be with the pain. And then sometimes you spread loving kindness into the painful feeling as well. And that's like responding skillfully rather than responding with aversion. If the sitting posture is simply too hard, it is okay to do walking meditation as your main practice. So we do a lot of this in the forest tradition, alternate between walking and sitting. So if you have like really serious hip pain or knee pain and the mind never gets peaceful because the moment you sit, it's already hurting, if it's easier for you to walk, then you just do the Buddha with the footsteps, lifting the foot Buddha, placing the foot Do, lifting the next foot Buddha, placing the next foot Do. And you'll be aware of those feelings. The foot, it has a very particular feeling when you take the pressure of the foot off the ground and then you place those feelings. Train the mindful awareness of being aware of those feelings for the first 5, 10, 15 minutes. And then at a certain point, when the mindfulness gets better, it might be possible to be with the feelings of the breathing, in and out breathing, while you're walking. So you're just walking slowly, mindfully. You've got a specific place where you do your walking meditation, and you're aware of your breath as you walk mindfully. But I recommend being aware of the footsteps first. Once you've got a good body-based presence in awareness, palpable sense of presence of mind, if the breath becomes more peaceful to observe the breath, then you observe the breath. So some of the great masters in Thailand have gone into deep absorptions while doing walking meditation and have had insights while doing walking meditation. So you don't need to feel that you need to be sitting to develop mindfulness, concentration, or wisdom or insight. It's very possible to, once you train in this, to then contemplate the body parts while you're doing the walking, contemplate elements while you're doing the walking. It's all of the things you can do while you're sitting, you can do while you're walking also. If in a situation that, suppose you're approaching death and you have a lot of painful feelings, if it's cancer or something like that, then I think metta practice as the main practice, because that's what's supporting you through a painful experience. May I be well, may I be happy. May all beings be well, may all beings be happy. May I be well, may I be happy. May all beings be well, may all beings be happy. And then you have this kind of like parallel functioning. You have your painful experience, but you also have the divine emotion, the Brahma Vihara, as a refuge, as a wholesome object in the middle of it all. And so I hope that's helpful.
Thank you, Prajan. Question 2. Hi, Bhante. May I know, after a person passed away within the 49 days, is the mind of the dead person still lingers around? When do they have the rebirth? Is it a straight away process or have to wait for 49 days? Thank you.
So this kind of question comes up fairly frequently with this group, and I think it comes up fairly frequently with this group because this group is predominantly Southeast Asians of a Chinese ethnicity, some of whom have studied Vajrayana. So in Vajrayana Buddhism, they are teaching there's a bardo state, there's 7 weeks of 7 days. At the end of the 7 days, you get a chance to be enlightened, etc., etc. So what my teacher Ajahn has told me, which I personally trust more, if a person has enormous good karma, they will tend to be instantly reborn the moment after death. If a person has extremely heavy bad karma, they will also be instantly reborn, but they'll be going down rather than up. If a person is a very gifted meditator, they may have more options, how long they take before they move on to their next birth. Most people, Ajahn says, will move on within 3 or 4 days. So if you have somewhat intermediate karma, good karma, bad karma, if your destination is likely to be human, animal, ghost, or lower level deva, anything in that region, it'll be 3 or 4 days. If you miss the 3 or 4 days, it will likely be a long period. Basically, you'll be in a ghost state. So this is why we train ourselves to be mindful that we could die today, and be determined to move on with some rapidity. One of the reasons people get born as ghosts is that they weren't ready to die. They hadn't thought about dying, and even as they're dying, they're not aware that they're dying. And so consciousness hangs around in that area. And then they will oftentimes look like the person they looked like when they were alive, but they're in a ghost state. And it's very frustrating because they'll be walking around trying to talk to people, and they'll be wondering why people can't see them and why they aren't answering them. So it's not, and some people can see them, and some people can, but most people can't. So it is not a happy destination. We should aspire, we should be mindful of death, mindful that it could happen, and when it happens, try to let go. With the 3 or 4 days, in order to take a human birth, you do need to find a suitable, basically you need to find a couple who are having sex, and the consciousness needs to be attracted to either the man or the woman, and the consciousness needs to enter the womb. It's not just like, boom, you're just there. It's a process. That's why it takes a few days. You need to find the right situation for the womb birth. So if after 49 days a person is still hanging around, then oftentimes people have dreams, and that's how people who care. So there's a bit of a superstitious and kind of obsessive quality to some of these questions. Like I think Chinese people, partly because of ancestor offerings to ancestors and these ceremonies that you do once a year and certain days, merits that you make. I think Chinese people think about their destination of their parents and grandparents and great-grandparents and 7 generations before much more than Westerners do. I think Westerners just kind of think, well, I don't know where they are, but I hope they're well wherever they are now. And maybe on the day that they die, you spread metta to them and make some dedications for them. But Chinese Malaysians, Chinese Indonesians, Chinese Singaporeans are very concerned with the state of their ancestors, which is metta. It is a form of metta. And but basically, if they should have moved on within a few days. And if they haven't moved on, then we need to make some serious good karma for them and to get a good practicing sangha to dedicate merit to them with that wish that they are able to move on. So with regards being absolutely sure, those of us who know great practitioners such as Ajahn, Ajahn, our ancestors are, if you go and visit them. But if you're some distance from them and don't have a close relationship with them, you can't really know. But we do have to develop some equanimity towards on the days that you want to make merit, make the merit, dedicate the merits, spread loving kindness. And then where they went is also according to their karma. There may be a limit to how much you can do. You do your best, make your merit, but you also want to be concerned about what you're doing and where your destination is going to be. Develop your mind, and you don't want to be one of these people that other people are worried about when you die. You want to be the person that when you're dead, everyone around you says, oh, I'm sure he went to Tuchita heaven. I have no doubt. That's the person you want to be, isn't it? So, or a human birth in a place where Buddhism is, where you continue to practice. When I was at Ajahn I had an opportunity to have a conversation with Ajahn Tong. Ajahn Tong is a senior student of Ajahn. He has a branch monastery. He told me a story a friend of his mother's, a relevant story. A friend of his mother's called her children into the room and told them, "I'll be dying in 7 days. And I just wanted to let you know, in this drawer beside my bed, there's one envelope, and that's for the coffin, the money for the coffin. There's another envelope, that's the donation for the monastery. There's another envelope, that's a donation for the monks who come and do the chanting. I don't want to bother anybody when I die, so just so you know, it'll be in 7 days, and I've made all the preparations." And she did. She died in her sleep 7 days later. So that is an and she was in her 80s. So there is an exemplary example of somebody who had it together. They were mindful of death, they were diligent in their practice. Probably what happened is a deva came to them in their meditation and said, "Oh, just to let you know, we'll be coming to get you in 7 days." So she died peacefully in her death, in her sleep. She died peacefully in her sleep. So be inspired, be determined. I am expecting all of you to have a death like that. Personally, for myself, I want to die in meditation posture. I want to send my consciousness through the top of my skull, and I'll be like, "Take me to my lotus." So anyway, that's plan A. There might have to be a plan B or a plan C, but it's always good to have a good plan A. You have to aim high, you know. So yes, be mindful of death, meditate every day so that when it happens, you're ready for it, not too confused, and have your metta practice. I've heard interesting stories of people who have Alzheimer's. Ajahn was telling me, there's a lady who has advanced Alzheimer's, but she can chant praises to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha in Thai because she learned it in childhood. So you know how with Alzheimer's, the short-term memory goes and that they go further and further into the past. And so even though this person doesn't know who anybody around them is, if the people around her start chanting that chant, she joins in and chants. So this is it's an important thing to learn. The things that you learn by heart and do frequently tend to stick with you. So I told that story the other week. Ajahn Pavro had a bleeding between his brain and skull, lost his memory, had to have a hole drilled in his head. The blood washed out. He didn't know what country he was in. He didn't know what was wrong. And he didn't have his robe or any of his familiar belongings. He's wearing a blue hospital gown. But he chanted the Metta Sutta. He just had that ready to go. If you find yourself in a tricky situation, chant the Metta Sutta. Similarly, I see Cliff and Linda are here. Cliff was telling me that his mum, she couldn't read, but she'd learnt the Heart Sutra in one of the Chinese dialects. And even as she developed dementia, if Cliff would chant the Heart Sutra, she could chant along with him. So it is valuable to learn some of these important chants by heart and do them frequently, because that can be a genuine support to you as you approach your death. And if the people around you know that you do that chant, they'll be able to chant that chant by your bed as you're dying. They say in Thai, "Triyam tua tai kon tai." You prepare your death before you die.
Rajan, question 3. Will Ajahn translate your biography into English?
So one of the main reasons that I wrote a biography was because it was a requirement for my permanent residency visa. In having to do it, when my committee member went to the immigration department to ask what was required for the permanent resident application, they dropped Ajahn Sumedho's biography on the table, boom. And they said, he needs one of these. He has to do this. And so since I had to do it, I didn't enjoy it much actually. But since I had to do it, I made the best of it, and I tried to make it something that would be inspiring and uplifting for Thai people. But in general, to write a biography when you're 48 is a bit unusual. And normally 70, 80, or maybe your students do it for you after you're dead, you know. But it's possible because people do learn through examples. And I do think that we need contemporary examples. One of the things that my Thai biography says is that although I am not an arahant, and although I'm not an old man, my life story to date may be helpful to some people because it acts in a way as a bit of a bridge between the generation of truly great monks and Pomana and Lumpocha that came before us and the world that we're living in now, because in many respects it's a world that has changed so much. And those examples, as inspiring as they are, they seem a long way away. Most modern people can't just go up into the jungle and practice with their fear of tigers. We have different challenges. So I do see the benefit of writing a contemporary story, and it may happen. There's also, it's an interesting consideration, like your life story. It is a true and accurate life story, but it was presented for a Thai audience. And if I were to write an English biography, it would actually be quite different because you'd be presenting it for a different group of people and you would want it to be helpful. And so it would be a lot of work. And I don't know, maybe 55, turning 49 in a couple of months. So if I make it to be 55, let's do an English biography. So.
Thank you. There will be a lot more stories by then.
Yeah.
Ajahn, you can start writing now. You don't have to wait till 55, Ajahn. I'm already 65.
Oh, you're worried that you won't be. It's true. I could work on the childhood years and publish it chapter by chapter or something. It's true.
Yeah. Don't forget Ratana Sutta, Ajahn.
Duki sent a message. No! Duki, you're not going to have to translate my English into English. It should be okay.
So
the other thing as well is like,
Ajahn.
I don't know, there's certain things in my childhood that would have to be part of the story. And I would feel uncomfortable if, how to say this? I wouldn't want my mother to be embarrassed by anything because I love my mother. So my mother's from a different generation, 50s people. 50s people didn't grow up with Donahue and Dr. Phil and Oprah Winfrey talking about everything. 50s people grew up thinking that there's just certain things that you don't talk about. And so I wouldn't want my biography to embarrass my mother. But there are certain things, obviously formative things that happen in people's childhoods and adolescence, which are an important part of the story. So it might have to wait until my mother is resting on her lotus in Tushita. And then
start at the 20s to 30s.
In her own time. So, yeah.
Thank you. Prajan, question number 4. Dear Ajahn, may I ask what is the translation or meaning of the Mahakaruna Dharani that we chant for each session? I can't seem to find a word-for-word translation online. While I do not understand it fully, there are some words that I can recognize. I chant it often in daily life and it has been of great benefit to me. May I also know what is the significance of this chant and how the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara to you? Sadhu anumodana with Mudita.
So it is a little unusual for a Theravadan monk in the forest tradition to have a deep loving regard for Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, but Achala Bhikkhu does. But I would say I would have a similar relationship to Avalokiteshvara as others may feel towards a Maitreya Bodhisattva. So most Theravadan understand that there is a great being who has been building qualities and virtues for an enormously long time, specifically so that he can become Maitreya Buddha and liberate a multitude of beings, lead them to Nibbana. So we can all agree on that. Theravadan practitioners have a loving regard towards Maitreya, and many people aspire, if by chance you're not all arahants by the time you pass away from this life, that many people aspire to be taught and established in Nibbana under the guidance of Maitreya. So Lord Buddha describes the universe as the Ananta Jagawan. That means the never-ending universe. And I think what Lord Buddha means by the never-ending universe is that there are galaxies and galaxies and galaxies, world systems and world systems, not just this world system. He refers to this world system as a 10,000-fold world system. So there are a lot of beings, a lot of conscious beings, a lot of worlds. That means there are also other Buddhas in other universes and other great Bodhisattvas who will be Buddhas in other universes. Sometimes those Bodhisattvas, because of the enormity of their merit, may become famous in other universes. And that's what I believe is the case with Avalokiteshvara, that this Bodhisattva practitioner has accumulated such vast qualities that his awareness of him or her, sometimes Chinese people see him, her as Kuan Yin. So it's a matter of personal faith. Either people have faith that Avalokiteshvara exists or not. So if you don't have faith, you're not particularly confident, then when I do this chanting, you don't have to chant along. And it doesn't matter. It's a matter of if a certain practice is helpful to you, then if it makes sense and if it's helpful, then you do it. If you don't resonate with it, then you don't have to do it. But the person who has asked this question has said that they have personally experienced benefit from it in their daily life. So that's interesting. What's interesting about Avalokiteshvara, right here, there's an image of Avalokiteshvara, which is a famous solid gold image from Sri Lanka. And Sri Lanka is known as a predominantly Theravada country, but for a period of time, there were a lot of Mahayanists. Today, I went to the National Gallery in Bangkok, and I was looking at sandstone images of Avalokiteshvara from 8 centuries ago in Thailand. And the Malaysian Peninsula, most of Indonesia, was a part of a Mahayana kingdom. So Avalokiteshvara's fame literally spread everywhere Buddhism spread. And if a certain kind of a bookie Theravadan scholar may think that was the degeneration of Buddhism, and degeneration of Buddhism spread everywhere where Buddhism did. Whatever. If somebody wants to believe that, that's okay. But for myself, I would suggest that if everywhere that Buddhism went, Avalokiteshvara's fame also went, and a loving regard for Avalokiteshvara also developed. So thinking about it, that's Thailand, Malaysia, Burma, Cambodia, Indonesia, India, obviously, and then also you have Tibet, Ladakh, Kashmir, Sikkim, Bhutan, Nepal, Mongolia, China, Korea, Vietnam, Japan. All of these countries have versions of Kuan Yin or Avalokiteshvara. And so I do believe that that Bodhisattva is a extremely developed, high-level Bodhisattva who has the capacity to respond to beings. The meaning of Avalokiteshvara means one who listens to the cries, or one who hearkens to the cries of suffering beings. So that Huan Shi Yin also means one who listens. Chen Rei Zik also means one who listens. Avalokiteshvara means one who listens. So that Bodhisattva is famous for being concerned about the suffering of beings. And she made a vow to respond with compassion. So oftentimes, I'm doing it more as a devotional practice. And as we'll go through the words, your good fortune, I did find a translation, word for word translation, from one of my bhikkhuni friends in America. And we'll go through that. So it starts with Namo Ratnatrayaya, homage to the three jewels. Namo Aryajana is like homage to noble wisdom. So it starts with Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha and transcendent wisdom. That's the very beginning of it. So as you're chanting it, you're thinking about the three jewels. You're thinking about transcendent wisdom. And then there are other, we'll go through it line by line. Mostly I do it as a devotional practice. And I think it's just part of my karma. Like I have been told, I'm very happy as a Theravadan bhikkhu, practicing, keeping strict rules and having the four foundations of mindfulness as the basis of my practice and contemplating the Four Noble Truths. Oftentimes in what they call the Northern tradition, they're doing these refined tantras and all these mantras and all these special practices, and you hardly hear anything about the four foundations of mindfulness and the Four Noble Truths. Master Wa from the city of 10,000 Buddhas said that the Northern tradition went too far north and the Southern tradition went too far south, and that they need to be more in the middle, which is, I think, wise advice, wise suggestion. So the development of the four foundations of mindfulness and contemplations of the Four Noble Truths and keeping of strict ethical precepts is the necessary foundation of Buddhism. How many more practices you want to do and for how long, with the intention of helping how many beings, that's a matter of personal choice. But the foundation is the foundation. And but I think for myself, well, I have been told that I have been a Theravadan bhikkhu in India and Afghanistan in a past life. But I was also a Chinese bhikkhu and a Chinese bhikkhuni and a Tibetan monk in past lives as well. So, and you're all thinking, if Ajahn Achalo has been a monk and a nun for so many lives, why isn't he enlightened yet? I don't know. Takes time. Anyway, I think because of past imprints where probably I developed some faith in this Bodhisattva, it is a part of my practice. I don't have any doubts, does he or she exist? And I do feel some energetic uplift when I do the chant. So I think that's in deciding whether a practice is helpful for us. When you do it, does your mind brighten? Is there an energetic uplift? Is it helpful? And in my experience, it is. And I didn't put this statue here just for this talk. This statue is here. It is the case in my life that wherever Ajahn Achalo spends a significant amount of time, there will be an image of Avalokiteshvara. But there is also, you can't see it, but there's also an image of Maitreya to my right. And I even have a little traveling shrine where I have the Buddha, Maitreya, and Avalokiteshvara. So it's just part of my karma. I think for a lot of Buddhists, it's the Buddha, Shakyamuni, and the Buddha, Mahamoggallana, and Sariputta. For Ajahn, it's the Buddha, Maitreya, and Avalokiteshvara. That's just the way it is. But there is also, I believe, an Arahant here. So we and on my traveling shrine, I have a picture of Ajahn and the Dalai Lama. So that's my traveling shrine. Buddha, Maitreya, Avalokiteshvara, Ajahn and the Dalai Lama. And if I don't have it, I just feel like something's missing. So I take it with me everywhere. And this is the thing, of how you work out whether a practice is helpful to you. If it feels like something which is nourishing and sustaining and supports you, then you do it, and do it wholeheartedly. So let's go through the words for those of you who are interested. Namo Ratna Trayaya, I prostrate to the three jewels. Namo Aryajana, I prostrate to the ocean of primordial awareness. Arya, an Arya being, Jhana, primordial awareness, Sagara, ocean. So that's the literal meaning, is I prostrate to the ocean of primordial awareness. So that can also probably be translated as the Nibbana element, Nibbana Dhatu, Vairochana, Vyuhu Rajaya, physical radiance, the appointed king. So I prostrate to Vairochana. So Vairochana is a Buddha in a different universe. So whether you have faith in that or not, but it is the name of a Buddha. Tathagataya Arahate Samyak Sambuddhaya. To the thus gone one, that's the Tathagata. Very beautiful word. Tathagata means thus come and thus gone, appearing and leaving. Here, also not here. It's the last life of the Buddha. The Bodhisattva took his 7 steps. I'm foremost in the world, and this is my last birth. Thus come and thus gone. Namo Sawa Tathagate Bye, I prostrate to all Tathagatas, that's all Buddhas, to all those thus gone. Arahate Bye, I prostrate to all the Arahants. So here you have it, paying respects to Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, Vairochana, another Buddha, all Tathagatas, all Arahants. So obviously extremely wholesome. Sangyak Sambuddhe Bye, I prostrate to the perfectly complete Buddhas. And this is the part where it becomes paying respects to Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva and then also making a request. So it's a very interesting chant. Supreme praises to Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, acknowledgement of the compassionate qualities of Avalokiteshvara or Chenrezig, and then a request. I prostrate, Namo Arya Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattvaya. I prostrate to the great compassionate Chenrezig. I prostrate to those who aspire to the enlightened mind of Buddhahood. Mahasattva. I prostrate to those with great minds. Mahakarunikaya. I prostrate to the one with great compassion. Tayata, is like this. We have to rely on the past for results. Om Dara Dara, I will hold, I will hold. Diri Diri, I am holding, holding. Duru Duru, please hold, please hold. So you're making a pledge to hold the training, to hold the practices. And now you're making a request for the Bodhisattva to hold you while you're holding these practices. So it's a request for blessings. And then Itiwate Sale Sale, requesting empowerment, move, move, pachale, pachale, strongly move, kusama, kusame, flower, a supreme flower is offered. So it's what is being asked to be moved is greed, hatred, and delusion. So that's what's implied there. It's a request for blessings, a request to be supported in the process of moving greed, hatred, and delusion. Kusama, kusame, a supreme flower is offered. Ili-mili, method and wisdom to the Supreme Guru. Chitiwala, the mind ignites, it burns delusions. The mind is pacified. Apanaya soha, we have requested blessings, so it is. So it's quite a short chant, but it contains many aspects. Acknowledgement and praise, reverential devotion to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, all Buddhas, all Tathagatas, all Arhants, an acknowledgement of the great compassion of Avalokiteshvara, a determination to practice this path, a request to be supported and blessed while practicing the path. So it is. And I always find, I do experience an energetic uplift after doing the chant. And I do find it a kind of a, I don't know how to, the best word for me to just explain it is it's kind of moist. So some of our practices are kind of dry, and this practice is moist. So it's depending on who you are, different people need different amounts of moistness. I need some devotional practices. I need some requesting prayer-like practices. And in a way, I think most human beings need someone to pray to as well. And sometimes the Buddha, it seems a bit aloof. He's already gone to Nibbana. Who are you going to pray to? Or who are you going to request help from if you're really struggling? And so the Dalai Lama explains that a bodhisattva in a celestial heaven realm, so we believe that Avalokiteshvara is based in something like a Tushita heaven realm. If you pray to the Dalai Lama called it a transcendent deity, a meditation deity. So it's a deity that exists for the sole purpose of leading people to Nibbana. That's why the bodhisattvas hang around, for us, to help us, to support us, to get liberated. It's different to a worldly deity. So there are other godlike beings in other heaven realms. People pray to be born in the presence of those beings in heaven. But the meditation deities, the celestial bodhisattvas, they exist to bless beings, to lead them to enlightenment. So that will either resonate with some people or it won't, and that's okay. If it resonates with you, you can take it on. And oftentimes I find 9 is a good number. 9 of these mantras, it feels about right. And we will share to the email list this translation. I also found an accurate Sanskrit recitation made by a Nepali man. So for those of you who are persnickety about pronunciation, you can pronounce it perfectly. And I'll just do it the way that I do it. but you can do it perfectly if you like. So.
Question 5. 2 siblings' parents passed away and were cremated 20 years ago. Now the siblings are fighting over the relocation of the ashes and urns. The elder brother is a Buddhist and has been faithfully praying to the deceased during ancestors worship month. The ashes and urns are located at the family clan association of the brother. The younger sister is a Taoist and seldom worships the deceased for past 20 years. Now suddenly she comes to claim to relocate the deceased ashes and urns to her parent-in-law's clan in another location. The elder brother is unhappy as he feels this is disturbing the peace of the deceased. The younger sister has a large parents-in-law group of people and is threatening the elder brother. What will the elder brother and family lose if the younger sister is forced to relocate the ashes and urns? What should the elder Buddhist brother do? Please advise.
So yes, many people of Chinese ethnicity during the period of Chengmeng will make offerings and do special practices and make dedications at the site where their ashes of their relatives are interred. And it's kind of a mixture of Taoism with Buddhism. And ideally, if you were a diligent, wise, strict practicing Buddhist, you would not be attached to the ashes of your parents or grandparents. You would see that as earth element. And Lord Buddha's teachings are to teach us to go beyond attachment. You're already attached to your own life. You're going to add on to it attachment to the elements of your 7 generations before you. It's not helpful for your liberation to do that. To relate to these ceremonies and these sites as a way to make good karma and dedicate merit to your relatives, that is skillful. But the thing is, you don't need the ashes to be there, and you don't need to be at the gravesite to make merit for your ancestors. If you do, that would mean that they're a ghost. And if they're a ghost hanging around at their ashes, that would mean that all of the previous years that you did this ceremony, that it didn't work. Is a serious thing to consider. You make merit where you are, and you dedicate merit with your mind. And those merit blessings, if you have a wholesome karmic connection with your ancestors, which you probably do, should be able to make it to those beings where they are. And if I had a sister who was being contentious about what to do with our parents' ashes, I would leave that with her. She can have the ashes. It's a pile of dust. For me, I want to make my mind bright and happy. I don't want to be contentious. And I want to dedicate the merit of that to my parents, wherever they are. So I guess you can always ask, please be reasonable, sister. These ashes haven't meant anything to you for the last 20 years, and they do mean something for us. If she decides to be unreasonable, as sisters sometimes can be, brothers can also be unreasonable, thus have I heard. Then you leave the unreasonableness with them, and you get on with making your mind beautiful, radiant, wholesome, and make merit for them. I remember this. I was trying to arrange a pilgrimage, and we were trying to choose the dates, and when the Malaysians couldn't go because they had to go to the site of their parents' ashes during that particular date. And I'm like, you don't think that you can pay respects in Bodhgaya and dedicate the merit to your ancestor from Bodhgaya? What are you people thinking? But tradition is deep, and people have their attachments, and we didn't go during that time because otherwise I wouldn't have had a full group. But we did dedicate merit to our ancestors from the holy sites when we went there. So yeah, I hope I haven't offended anybody. I hope that what I said may have been helpful.